Look, MPs are really concerned about the missteps that have been made at the top of the party over the past few weeks. They're not
months,
just...
Not weeks, months.
Yeah.
No.
Since day one,
Well,
since really.
We can turn this into a pylon, guys.
We're just being truthful. That's
Yeah, and I'm trying to recognise the reality that is there. Backbench MPs are really frustrated, and many of us are angry at the way in which the government has not managed to pull it together and get on with the job. So I understand why they're saying, look, this has got to happen.
Do you think Starmer knows that he's in trouble?
Well,
do you think that he
I do think he
recognises it?
reads the front pages, yes.
No, but I know, but he's a very resilient man, shall we say. He's very good at, like, Teflon-like, shall we say. Do you think that he's actually starting to feel a chink in his armour? He's starting to recognise that things are as grim as they are?
I think that he has made a mistake in that he has surrounded himself with people who are telling him what he wants to hear and who are perhaps shielding him from what he needs to hear. And that's always a bad move for a leader. A leader needs to surround himself with people who are able to criticise constructively,
disagree.
but criticise and disagree. And I think what we've seen with the cabinet that he appointed and that he's now rearranged, there's nobody in there that you say, that's the person who would go up to the Prime Minister and say, look, for goodness sake, Keir, don't you realise that this is not going to work because...
Why do you think that is, though? Because he's got a legal background, he knows about arguing a case. Do you think it's ego, or do you think that he's just not being shrewd enough to know that he needs those dissenting voices who could be constructive?
Christo, if I knew and if I had the opportunity, I would go up to him and I would say, Keir, this is the problem.
He's ruthless. He's so ruthless. It's just surprising to me that he's making that mistake when it's quite a basic mistake.
He's not got that many options, though.
But you see, what I think is the real failure here is if you look at some of the things that we have done, okay, and I know you disagree with them politically, but some of the things that were in our manifesto that we're very proud of, if you look at, and you talked about renters' rights, but if you look at the Employment Rights Bill, if you look at what we're doing in terms of childcare, these are things which we promised to do, we are doing, but we're not communicating it. You know,
it's not a problem of communication,
it's not just a question of communication. It isn't. Though it is true, they've had one or two things, I would say, on planning. That was something that I think most people would agree was a good thing, and that seems to have died. The ability to
trade deal with America.
The 5 million extra appointments in the NHS.
But unable to sell these
things. Which are really positive, but
it's drowned out by the disaster after disaster after disaster
Dwayne,
after
that's
disaster.
Exactly right. And these disasters in themselves, it's somebody who's done something stupid or something venal. And
you're talking about...
Keir Starmer has a serious problem, and for once, it didn't come from the Conservatives, from Reform, or from the press. It came from inside his own party. Labour MP Barry Gardiner sat down on national television and said what Westminster has been whispering for months, that backbench MPs are frustrated, that they're angry, that the government has fundamentally failed to pull itself together. These are not the words of an opposition attack dog, these are the words of a Labour MP talking about his own Prime Minister. But here's what makes this moment bigger than just one uncomfortable interview. Gardiner didn't just criticise the policy failures, he went straight for the structure of power around Starmer himself. His argument was stark. The Prime Minister has surrounded himself with people who tell him what he wants to hear, not what he needs to hear. In any government, that is a slow-moving catastrophe. In a government already drowning in controversy, it is potentially fatal. Think about what that actually means. Starmer rebuilt himself as the serious, competent alternative to Conservative chaos. His entire brand was built on discipline, professionalism, and forensic judgment. And now a member of his own parliamentary party is publicly arguing that his inner circle is shielding him from reality, that the cabinet reshuffle changed the faces but not the problem. The strategy from Starmer's allies has been to absorb the criticism, stay resilient, and point to genuine legislative achievements, the Employment Rights Bill, renters reform, NHS investment, and to be fair, those achievements are real, but they are being completely buried, because in politics, the narrative always wins. And right now, Labour's narrative is disaster after disaster after disaster. For ordinary British people, this matters enormously. You voted for change. You were promised a government that would get things done quietly and competently. Instead, you are watching internal chaos play out on GB News, with Labour MPs publicly questioning whether the Prime Minister even understands how bad things have become. The next few weeks will be defining. If Starmer cannot silence the internal dissent and shift the public conversation back to policy, the psychological momentum shifts permanently to his opponents. And once a leader loses that, history tells us they very rarely get it back. The cracks are visible. The question now is whether anyone inside number 10 is actually listening.